Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
What do you do when your perfect marriage begins to crumble because of a secret affair? Today's story with a similar plot. Stephen Moore will show how one betrayal turned his life into a fight for truth and justice. Do you know what an 8M room is? Since I wear size 10.5 shoes, it only takes me a little over 9 steps to walk, and I've done that a lot lately. You see, I've had too much free time over the past 4 months, and since I don't have a laptop right now, I'm trying to find something to occupy my mind. I either recite the periodic table in my head or the formulas I've worked on before. Sometimes I lie in bed, listen to the sounds around me, and try to identify them to pass the time. I keep telling myself that I acted in the best interests of my daughter. I know this is true, but now I wonder if I had other motives for my actions. I'm not sure of anything anymore, though, but that's the story I'm sticking with, at least until I get out of here. Good morning, Mr. Moore. How are you feeling today? My lawyer, Victoria Howe, asked me as I was led to a long, shiny wooden table and my handcuffs were removed. Pretty good. I lost 2 more pounds. I think I'll be at my ideal weight by Christmas. You know I can do 100 military push-ups without stopping. Our conversation was interrupted. Everyone stands up. The Fifth Circuit Court declares the hearing open. The Honorable Judge Thomas is present, the bailiff announced to everyone in the courtroom. The judge took her seat and, adjusting her reading glasses, looked in our direction. Miss Howe, are you and your client ready to begin? Yes, Your Honor, Victoria replied. Okay, then continue. Victoria, or Vicky as I like to call her, attempted to present another round of motions. The judge listened to her monologue, which seemed 10 minutes long, and Vicky didn't even take a breath. Vicky argued that since I was given full custody of my daughter, Linda, what I was being subjected to was nothing less than cruel and inhumane punishment. Miss Howe, is your client willing to tell the court the whereabouts of his daughter and allow her ex-wife to see her? These are the only questions we are considering today. The court does not challenge his right to custody, however, his rights to meet with his ex-wife's daughter have not been respected for 7 months. The condition of his release, as previously stated, is that the court be informed of the whereabouts of his daughter. He must also allow his ex-wife to see his daughter under a court order. It is also indicated that his ex-wife is willing to consider supervised visits if she is allowed to see her daughter again. I looked at Victoria and shook my head. Your Honor, at this time, Mr. Moore refuses to reveal the whereabouts of his daughter. In addition, we would like to file a petition to give him access to his laptop so that he can monitor the daily activities of his company, Victoria said. Contempt, disgust, no, it was more like anger that ran across the judge's face. It was almost as if she was saying to herself, "How dare you disobey my order?" The motion is denied, the judge said loudly. Mr. Stephen Moore must remain in the custody of the county jail until he can inform the court of the whereabouts of his daughter, Linda Moore. With these words, the judge hit her gavel and said, "Next case." Before the bailiff could come to take me back to my cell, Vicky whispered, "She's against you. Did you know that? She'll keep you locked up until you tell her where Linda is." I could tell that Vicky, like the judge, was becoming more and more irritated with me. "Vicky, do whatever you need to do to get me out of here. I don't care how or what." "Steve, tell them." "I can't, and you know why. Just go back to your office and do what I'm paying you big money to do, and ask Carl to come by tomorrow and tell me how things are going in my company," I said, looking at the gloomy Vicky. "Steve, I'm running out of options." "Vicky, I believe that you will get me out of here, and we will celebrate Christmas with our family again. So no matter how much it costs, get me the hell out of here." With these words, I was handcuffed again and escorted back to my cell. This is how my last 3 court appearances went. Vicky was right, the judge was really after me. She developed a reputation as a tough judge. She didn't allow anyone to manipulate her in her court, no matter how much money they had, and I had a lot. The next day, Carl stopped by and gave me an update on how things were going at my company. "Carl, I wish you would smile just once in a while. It would really cheer me up, damn it," I said with a smile. "Steve, how can I smile when so much is not getting done because you are sitting in this place? Tell them what the hell they want to know so we can get back to running your company." I glanced at him. Okay, I tried. We continued. Over the next hour, he reported to me how everything was going. I trusted this guy as much as I trusted myself, and he never let me down. We were still making money, but the negative publicity in the newspapers was hurting some of our new business. Carl, these idiots are doing this to look good in the eyes of the media and their shareholders. You and I both know that they can't get our products anywhere else in the country, so they'll eventually have to turn to me. However, there are 2 companies that I want to pay dearly for this when they return. They smeared me in the press, and they will pay 10 times more for every word printed. By the way, how is our other project going? I knew that our conversations were always recorded. We are making progress, but it is slow and expensive. Carl, I said, looking him straight in the eye, I don't care how much money or people you have to put into it. I want it done and done soon. Understood? Yeah, boss. I just wanted you to know about the costs. I trust that my company will be in good condition when I leave here, and don't worry, you will be richly rewarded. By the way, find another group of lawyers to help Victoria Howe. The judge seems to have a personal grudge against me. See if we can get her off my case. You know if this doesn't work, you'll only make her angrier, right? And what? What is she going to do, put me in jail? I snorted. Also, do a background check on her. There must be something we can use. I told him, standing up as our hour was coming to an end. Take care of my baby, okay? I turned and walked back to my cell. That night, I counted the cracks in the ceiling and found another one after counting and recounting 5 times. Only 21. I have to complain about my conditions to the judge, I joked to myself before laying down on the bed. Divorce was terrible, if for no other reason than because I thought it would never happen to us. Thank God my father convinced me to enter into a rock-solid prenuptial agreement, or it could have been much worse. I had just established myself in the industry, and my love for Sheila had blinded me. At that time, it did not seem necessary to me to enter into such an agreement. Hell, we were going to love each other forever. Forever probably only lasted 8.5 years. Luckily, she agreed to sign it. She probably also thought that eternity meant forever, even though it didn't. Like I said, I'm rich, but above all, I'm smart and maybe a little arrogant. I probably could not have gone to school at all, but my mother said that I needed a normal upbringing. This included the school experience, although I was bored most of the time. However, she agreed for me to take college courses online as long as it didn't interfere with my regular life. I graduated from college and received my bachelor's degree by the time I was a senior in high school. Mom also insisted that I go on dates at least twice a month. Most of the girls I met were dumb compared to me, and I quickly grew tired of their stupid teenage ways and games. At 5 feet 10 inches and 165 pounds, I wasn't an athlete and looked the part, but I didn't wear boring glasses or pocket protectors. I looked quite normal. You know, girls would tell each other about guys like me, well, he has a great sense of humor. My parents weren't rich, and I drove their old car. You can probably joke that I was a good match for the prom queen. Yes, of course, Mom. I really don't want to go tonight, I told her over and over as she drove me to one event after another. Honey, do this for me, okay? Meet a nice girl, talk to her, and even ask her to dance. Young man, you may be book smart, but you also need to learn how to communicate with others. You can't learn communication skills from a book, they have to be experienced, she always reminded me with a smile on her face. Now go and have a good time. My mother never took no for an answer. She was going to make me a sociable person even though I didn't want to be. I would rather blend in with my surroundings and live my own life as inconspicuously as possible. However, this turned out to be quite difficult after I was given the nickname the Brain, and it stuck. Kids can be so cruel sometimes. Graduating from high school set me free. I received a full scholarship to our state university and could do almost anything I wanted after that. I double majored in chemistry and biology with a minor in mathematics. Through college, I received a research grant to work on food enzymes, and that's how I met Sheila. She was studying to be a laboratory assistant. Standing 5 feet 4 inches tall with wavy light brown hair, sparkling blue eyes, and a good figure, she was smart and sweet in her own way. I spent most of my time in the lab, and when she came in to do classwork, I was always there. Sometimes she would get stuck on a problem and ask me 1 or 2 questions. I was always happy to help over and over again. Simple questions developed into full-blown discussions about what I was working on. Although Sheila could understand the concepts of what I was trying to do, the principles of my methods usually eluded her. When I invited her to dinner, we shared pizza and a pitcher of soda, and I began to like her as much more than just a lab colleague. Alas, to my chagrin, she told me that her studies came first, and although we could date, she was not looking for a relationship at the moment. So, we remained just friends and met from time to time when she allowed. After earning a dual doctorate in chemistry and biology and a master's degree in business, my short college years were over. I had learned everything I could and was now applying for my own government research grants. With some help, I got 2 and opened my laboratory in a small store. I took out loans, and my parents even took out a second mortgage on their house to help me finance my new lab and equipment. When I started working 14 to 16 hours a day, my mother quit her job to help me with the endless government paperwork. This allowed me to focus solely on my work. When I made my first breakthrough, it was especially remarkable because it happened after my grants had expired. The results and future profits were to be entirely mine. When I made my second and third breakthroughs, my father quit his job and became my business manager. Life was busy but good. One thing I never understood is that when you want to hire someone good, you don't have to look for them, all you have to do is let them know, and they will find you. I needed 2 outstanding people to help me in my work. I wasn't making a lot of money, but with the right people, I felt like I could do it within a couple of years, especially since my 4 patents would probably be approved in the next year. I probably interviewed 20 people who thought they were good, and when I was done with them, they walked away with their tails hanging. Katie came on the recommendation of an old friend from school. She was extremely shy and almost never made eye contact with me, but she was super smart. "Katie, tell me about yourself. How are things going at home?" I asked. She looked at me and said that she lived with her parents and younger brother. She didn't have a boyfriend, which didn't surprise me, but she needed a job since she had just finished school. Her grades were excellent, and although I couldn't pay much, I offered her a job. "Katie, I can offer you $2,000 a month to get started. You will be on salary and will not mark time. I expect you to do your job because I won't have time to look after you. If you do what I ask, you will grow with the company, and so will your salary." "Mr. Moore, will there be a specific dress code here?" she asked, blushing slightly. "Katie, I don't care if you work as long as the job gets done." My answer made her blush even more. She agreed, and all I had to do was find one more employee. Carl worked for a large pharmaceutical company. He received a huge salary but was passed over for promotion due to office politics. He was more than a little annoyed. He was the one I was looking for, but we were far from agreeing on what I could afford to pay and what he thought he was worth. When he received an offer from another company, we met again. He threw the offer on my desk to show that he wasn't kidding about the amount. "Carl, if I were you, I would take this offer and run with it. However, in 3 years, when everything is fine with me and this amount seems like small change, I hope you will still think the same," I said, returning the papers to him. "But if you accept my latest offer, next year I will give you 1% ownership of my company, and every year after that, up to 5%. So you can take the money that's on the table now, or you can work hard and have a real future ahead of you. The choice is yours." It took him 2 days, but he accepted my offer. I was ready. We were growing quickly, and I needed more help both in the lab and in the office. One day, when I was out picking up lunch for everyone at the nearby Subway, I met Sheila. She was standing in line about 4 people ahead of me. As she walked past me with her order, she stopped to talk. Hell, we ended up having lunch together. She worked in a small laboratory about 2 miles away and didn't make much money. Sheila believed that she needed experience before she could ask for what she felt she deserved. "What do you expect when you talk about money?" I asked. "Right now, I earn $1,200 a month without any benefits. I think I'm worth at least $2,000 in full medical services," she said without batting an eyelid. "Can you type?" What do you mean? Can I type? It's a simple question. Can you type, not just tap on a keyboard? Can't everyone do it? She answered, not understanding where the conversation was going. Well, if you can type and don't mind doing all sorts of office work and lab work, I'd like to offer you a job. Steve, who do you work for? For myself. I have my own laboratory on Canal Street. I already have 2 employees and my parents working for me, and we all need a little help here, I said, giving her my business card. Think about it. Come by after work one day, and I'll give you a tour. I wish I could talk longer, but I have lunch here for everyone, and they won't be happy that I took so long. Think about it, Sheila. Where have you been? I'm dying of hunger, asked Carl. Met an old friend and offered her a job, I said as I handed out food. Is she someone I should know? He said mockingly. Just a girl I dated in college a couple of times, that's all. And what will be her duties, if I may ask? Carl, you really are an idiot, I said, throwing him a can of Coca-Cola. Just asking, boss, but you don't have to answer if it's too personal. Everyone laughed except Mom. Sheila came over on Thursday after work. She knocked on the door, and when no one answered the doorbell from the front, she tried the door, found it open, and entered. Is there anyone here? She shouted, entering the door to the laboratory. Dad and I were last, and I stood up to greet her. Sheila, glad you could come, I said, walking up to her. Sheila, this is my dad, Ken. I introduced them to each other, and my dad extended his hand. Dad, Sheila and I studied together, I explained. So, this is the girl you offered the job to, he said, assessing her. Sheila, let me give you a quick tour of my creation. Over the next 2 hours, I showed her in detail where we were now and where I plan to go in the next couple of years. We've just signed 3 new contracts and are moving into a larger facility. My dad has secured the funding, and by Christmas, we'll be double our current size. Sheila, I think you'd be a good addition to our team, and I can offer the salary you are seeking. Would you like to look at my resume or something before you offer me a job? You forgot we already worked together in college, Steve. You worked, and I studied. Well, I know you're smart, hardworking, and open to new ideas. With those qualities, you'll be a great addition to our staff. In that case, I accept your offer. I need to give my current employer a week's notice, but I can start immediately after that. We shook hands, and my father watched without saying a word. I'll expect you early in the morning on the 15th, wear what you're comfortable in. Every day is like a Friday for us when it comes to clothing. You also don't have to worry about lunch. One of the perks is we provide lunch and dinner if we have to stay late. 10 minutes later, she left, and Dad and I finished work. You like her, don't you? Dad asked. Dad, it's just a girl I dated a couple of times, that's all. Steve, remember I'm the one you're talking to, he replied without smiling. We've got a tough 6 months ahead of us, and I need you to keep your head down until we move and get settled in the new place. Dad, you worry too much. Son, this is my job. Sheila started, and she was better than I expected. She picked things up quickly and became a valuable assistant almost overnight. Everyone was happy for me except my father. He watched my feelings for Sheila grow, and although he was receptive, he was also careful. Why doesn't Dad like Sheila? I asked my mother one night. Steve, he likes Sheila, but he feels like you have too much going on for romance right now. Mom, Dad proposed to you on the 3rd date, and 2 weeks later, you guys got married, and he thinks I'm moving too fast? She was laughing. You know your father. He will watch over you until the day he dies, but I will talk to him. Steve, I'm your girlfriend, right? Well, if not, then I don't know what we've been doing for the last 7 hours. Not stupid. I mean, we're together, right? I sat with my back to the head of the bed and took a glass of wine from the nightstand. Okay, what happened? I asked, taking a sip and handing it to her. I just want to know that we're walking down the road together, that's all. In other words, you want to make sure I don't just use your hot body for my own gratification? I said with a laugh as I reached for her. She retorted by hitting me with a pillow. Do I have to break it down for you? I'm falling in love with you, and I know you love me, but I'm not sure how much." "There, I said it." She finished her wine and looked at me with a worried expression. "Well, does this mean I have to give up all the other hot babes I date every other night?" I joked, but when she didn't smile, I realized that she was serious. "Listen, honey, I really care about you, and I think you know that." "It's love, I think so, but give me some time, okay? After we move, we'll have a nice break and we can explore all our options." "Steve, I think we've already explored all my options except one, and that's not going to happen anytime soon. I just needed to know you weren't toying with me, that's all." "Sheila, I do two things. I don't lie, and I don't play games with the people I love," I said, calming her down by kissing her. "So now that we've got that cleared up, what is this opportunity that you haven't mentioned yet?" We returned to what we had been doing for the last 24 hours, each trying to tire the other out. I won. After that, we became an official couple, and everyone knew and accepted it, even my father. The next few months were tough. Things were going well, and with the move, we had little time for each other. By the 15th of December, we were in our building, and by the 22nd, everything was up and running in time for Christmas. We closed the place between Christmas and New Year's, and everyone relaxed over the holidays. We spent Christmas Eve at her parents' and Christmas Day at mine. By the evening of the 25th, we were exhausted. "I'm serious." "I'm serious too," I replied. I sat her on my lap. "Steve, look at me, please. I want us to get an apartment together." This made me stop for a moment and look at her with real eyes. "I'm serious. I think it's time for us to move in together." "Steve, I'm 23, and you're 27. Don't you think it's time for us to move? For what we spend on hotel rooms, we could pay for an apartment," she added in an uncertain voice. "That is, of course, if you want to." I figured that sooner or later this would definitely happen, and I was already thinking about it. With the move, everything should return to normal, whatever that may be. I really like the idea of us living together. "Okay, when do you want to do it?" I think it surprised her a little. She was probably preparing herself for an argument, and now she just sat there looking at me until her brain caught up with what I had just said. "Oh my God, this will be so great. We'll have our own place, and we won't even have to wear clothes if we don't want to." She bounced on the bed. When she stopped and had a serious look on her face, I became a little worried. "How do you think your parents will react to this news, especially your father?" It took about 3 weeks, but we found a suitable place and moved in together. My parents wanted to know what my intentions were, but all I told them was that I wanted to get to know Sheila better. "I think you know her pretty well," Mom said with a wink, "judging by all the Hampton Inn bills I've paid over the last few months." Dad didn't say a word, but he knew he couldn't control me anymore. Life was good. Over the next 2 years, my business grew rapidly, and we expanded once more before finally settling into another larger facility. That same year at Christmas, I proposed to Sheila, and she accepted. Dad insisted on a prenuptial agreement, and although I objected, Sheila did not even think about signing it. I made 2 modifications to make it less difficult, but in the end, we all got what we wanted. 3 months later, Sheila became pregnant, and her mother was overjoyed. When Linda was born, Sheila quit her job and stayed home to care for her. She was beautiful and looked just like her mother. She had the same light brown hair, blue eyes, and a small mole on her right ankle. Mom and Sheila became friends like thieves while Dad and I ran the company. The next 5 years were good for us. My business nearly quadrupled in size, and I increased my number of employees from 4 to 14. Usually, I still feel busy, but Sheila requires my presence at dinner at least 3 nights a week. We bought a nice house, more than we really needed, and with some free time, Sheila became involved in charity work and fundraising for the Children's Wish Foundation. "Girls, there are no more events this weekend," I whined. "I thought the 3 of us would sneak away and have some fun," I said, wrapping my arms around her waist and kissing her. "If you cancel, I will make it worth your time," I said pleadingly. "Honey, you know that Saturday's auction is important to me, and it's for a good cause," she replied, kissing me. "These kids won't be able to sneak away for the weekend, but if we raise enough money, we can at least make some of them smile." She had a good heart, and although I didn't like it, she was right. So on Saturday night, we all went. I told my parents that if I had to go, they would go too. They didn't care, except that my dad said he wasn't going to dance no matter what my mom said. The evening turned out to be quite pleasant until I met Ken and his wife Connie. He had been working with Sheila on this project, and I already knew that he owned a successful aircraft parts company just outside of town. Their biggest client was the US government, and with 2 wars going on, business was going well. "Steve, this is Ken and Connie Collins," my wife introduced us. "Ken has been a tremendous help in putting together the items we will be auctioning today. It wasn't hard. I just went to a few places and got them to double what they planned to give and got the rest of the money in donations," Ken said. "Ken, don't be so humble. Thanks to you, we will be able to send over 100 kids to various camps this summer. You should be proud of yourself," Sheila said. "If it weren't for Connie, I never would have done this. She ran the company while I was traveling around raising funds." He looked at his wife and smiled. "I don't know what I would do without her," he added. The smile she sent him back was pleasant but forced, the kind of smile you give someone when you're angry and you don't want it to show. "Ken, I see some people over there that you should meet. Maybe you can talk them into throwing in a few extra dollars," Connie said as she led her husband away. The only thing I knew about him was that he had money, and he wanted everyone to know it. Arrogant and pretentious would be good words to describe him, but I knew Connie very well. She came from old money and was tough as nails. She was an excellent negotiator and a worthy opponent for her competitors. She was more than qualified to run the business while her husband was traveling around fundraising and entertaining, but she didn't seem to like it. "This is the last person I want to run into," I thought to myself. The dinner was good, but the speeches were too long as usual. Everyone was thanked for their help, especially Ken and Sheila. After dinner, the music started, and my father cringed. Mom persuaded him to dance, and I happily took my beautiful wife into my arms. I wasn't initially bothered when Ken asked Sheila to dance. Although nothing strange was happening on the floor, what bothered me was the way he was holding her, talking and laughing with her as they moved to the beat of the music. This was Ken's only and last dance with my wife that evening. When the auction began, everyone got involved as this or that item was sold for double its value, knowing it was for a good cause. When we came to large lots, bids were no longer placed so freely. Everyone knew that money was tight everywhere. I bought a couple of mid-priced items, and that was all I was going to do until Sheila asked me to bid on a weekend in wine country. "Please, darling, do this for me." How could I refuse? The bidding got heated, and Ken seemed to really want to win for some reason. When I made my final bet, Ken immediately offered $1,000 more, and since there were no other bids, he won. When he went to collect his prize, he said he did it to take his wife there for her birthday. Everyone applauded and admired such a sweet gesture, but his wife did not. She just sat and sipped wine from her glass. I think things are not going smoothly in their paradise, I thought to myself. "Steve, we should have won this trip," Sheila said with a pout. "Honey, for the amount he paid, we could go for a week instead of 3 days." "Steve, he did this for his wife. What a romantic gesture." "Okay, I'll buy you flowers on the way home. How about that?" She just looked at me with a look that said it wouldn't be enough. That's how it all started. It is said that a cockroach can fit into a gap 64 fractions of an inch wide simply by squeezing through. For me, Ken was exactly that, and now I only regretted that I did not trample him when I had the opportunity. However, life moved on. I worked, Sheila continued to do charity work, and the 3 of us were one big happy family until May 21st. It was late, and I was thinking about some documents when I looked at my watch. It was 7 in the evening, and I had to get out of there. I turned off the light and headed to my mom's office. She sat with her head down on the table. "I don't pay my employees to sleep on the job, even if they gave birth to me," I said with a loud laugh, but she didn't move. "Mom, wake up. Dad will kill me if I don't get you out of here." I walked up to her and put my hand on her shoulder. It was cold, stone cold. When paramedics finally arrived, they were unable to revive her. She was already dead. They said it looked like a heart attack, but they couldn't be sure until all the tests were done. Everything for the next 24 hours went in slow motion. I heard voices, but they were somewhere far away, and I simply ignored them. There were probably a lot of tears and people telling me how sorry they were, but nothing got through to me. It was my mother, the only constant in my life. "Steve, honey, is there anything I can do for you?" my wife asked more than once, but in fact, nothing could be done except to bring my mother back. My daughter cried, and I held her until she calmed down, and then I began to cry, but my tears did not stop. At least inside, a part of me died that day, and I didn't know how big it was until months later. Carl and the other managers supported Dad and me. Dad knew Mom was sick, but they both decided not to tell anyone, including me. All the arrangements were made in advance, so nothing needed to be done. I didn't eat or drink and forced myself to breathe from time to time. I don't remember much of the funeral. I know I was physically there, but only physically. A lot of people came to the funeral, and they told me that they wrote a nice article about her in the newspaper, but I didn't read it. My mom left, and this time she didn't take me with her. Dad was always the one who kept a tight rein on me, but Mom did the rest. She met my emotional needs as a child and taught me to be who I became. Through her eyes, I saw the world as something I could conquer. When Linda was born, we became even closer, if that was even possible. When she died, I was lost. I felt empty inside. I think I died for a while too. Dad and Sheila helped me get the help I needed through counseling and lots of medication. I began to get my life back, but it took almost 5 months. I functioned at work, and if you didn't know me better, you'd swear I was fine as long as I never left the privacy of my lab. This must have been especially difficult for Sheila and Linda. They couldn't reach me, and although they tried, I never responded. Did we make love? Well, I'm sure we had intimacy, but it must not have been very good because I could see that she was often disappointed with me. As I began to come to my senses, the only thing I noticed was that she no longer wore glasses. She had laser vision correction in the last couple of months. Life moved forward without me. Carl was sent by God, and one day I called him and told him about it. He asked if I needed anything more, and I said he did more than I could ever ask for. Dad returned to work with renewed vigor the week after the funeral. More than once, Carl had to tell him to go home or he would physically remove him from the office. Between the two of them, the business grew while I tried to wrap my head around the fact that my mom was no longer with us. It was just over 6 months after the funeral when I first realized that something was wrong. "Steve, I'm going to a fundraiser tonight. I should be back before midnight," Sheila said as she got dressed. "You don't want me to come with you?" I asked. "I don't need a zombie for a date." "Take your meds, and I'll see you when I get back," she replied. It was cruel, I thought. "Do you want me to at least give you a ride?" "No need. Ken will come pick me up," she said, putting on her earrings. I think my look said it all. "What? What's your look?" "This is a fundraiser, not a date." With that, I walked over to my medicine bottles, opened them, and dumped the contents into the toilet. "Steve, what are you doing?" "What should have been done months ago. Now give me 20 minutes to get dressed. You call Mr. Ken and tell him that my wife will be accompanied to dinner by her own husband." I looked at her angrily, and she knew better than to say anything. The event was well attended, and everyone was still expressing their condolences to me for my loss. I thanked them but immediately changed the subject. When I saw that cockroach, I prepared to crush it. "Steve, you look good. How are you?" Ken asked. "Couldn't be better, Ken," I said out loud while inwardly I looked at him with contempt. I think he got the hint because he quickly apologized and left. "That wasn't very friendly," Sheila whispered to me. "I have no reason to be friendly to him," was my answer. After dinner, when the music started, I asked Sheila to dance. "Are you able to?" she asked. "I'm not dead yet," I replied, smiling. So we danced for the next half hour. It felt good to hold her in my arms again, and then it happened. "Hey, old man, can I ask your lovely wife for this dance?" Ken asked, already reaching out to her. "No." I suppose the surprised look on his face meant that he was not used to being rejected. This also surprised Sheila. "Steve, it's just one dance," she pleaded, looking at me. What about no, don't you understand? Okay, let me say it again slower so you fully understand what I mean. No, you will not dance with my wife now or ever in the future. Now, do you understand, or do I need to write this down for you? I said, looking him straight in the eyes. No problem, he said, walking away. Steve, that was rude, Sheila said. Did you want to dance with him instead of me? Of course not. Why are you asking such a thing? Because that's how you looked at me when I basically told him to go to hell, that's why. My mind began to make a lot of assumptions after that night. Did we make love the night we got home? No, she complained that she had a headache. The next morning, I was gone long before Sheila woke up. I was the first one at work. Good morning, boss, Carl said as he walked in, put his things down, and started making coffee. You look good. How are you feeling? As if I could curse out a dead dog stinking fifth place, so you better not mess with me today, I muttered without smiling. Well, looks like old Steve is back. Maybe we can finally catch up. For the next 2 days, I did not return home at all. I slept in my office, took a shower, and since I had several sets of clothes there, all I needed was some food. I had already turned off my cell phone, turned off my office phone, and told everyone to leave me alone. I had been checking and rechecking the test results over the past months and found that too much had been overlooked. I called a meeting. Listen, guys, if you still want to be here on Monday, I highly recommend you get your heads out of your asses and get to work, or I'll find someone who will. That's my only warning. Next time, I'll be writing checks for dismissal. Is that clear? There were a lot of nods, a few scared faces, and a couple of irritated people, but the message was understood by all. When Sheila came in a few minutes before 5, Carl warned her not to come into my office. I don't know what happened between you two, but if I were you, I wouldn't go there, he said. He doesn't scare me, was her response. Well, it's your funeral, he muttered as he turned away. When she came in, I didn't even look up. I knew who it was, but I wasn't going to play her games today. Steve, she said once, and then louder a second time, Steve. I looked up, and my eyes said it all. Are you coming home for dinner tonight? She asked. Good question. Define home. What are you talking about? It's a simple question. Sheila, define what home is and why the hell I should go there. Okay, I'll play your stupid games. Home is where we all live and where you have to come every night to eat and sleep, she replied sarcastically. See, that's my point. This is where I live with my loving family. This was my fortress of privacy, where I could be myself, play with my beautiful daughter, and make love with my wife. Now, I'll ask you again, why do you want me to go to a place where I know I'm not welcome? Steve, you haven't been there for months. When your mom died, you left us, and for a while, I thought you were coming back. She died, you didn't or shouldn't have. It might have been hard for you, but how do you think we all felt, knowing that we couldn't do anything? I don't know how often I reached out to you in bed, hoping that at least once you would take me into your arms. I so wanted to make you feel better, drive away all your demons, but you never let me in. I tried. God knows how hard I tried. But in the end, I gave up and just decided to wait for you to return or die. One of two things had to happen in the end. So when did you and your buddy Ken become a couple? We're not a couple. He's a good friend. He was someone you could talk to, someone you could confide in when you weren't there. Friend with benefits? I haven't made love to anyone since the last time we did it, but I'm not going to wait for you forever anymore. If you don't decide to continue our marriage, I want to get out of it. This time she not only screamed, but tears streamed down her face. Okay, then you have to make one promise and one promise only before I make this decision, I told her. Anything. Take your time to answer, Sheila, before I ask. You may not be able to follow through. Steve, I said anything, and I mean it. Okay. I don't want you to talk to or see Ken again, ever. You can't be serious. It's stupid. I'm not going to compete with Ken for my own wife. You have to make a choice. It's either him or me. You can't have both of us, and since I'm such a nice guy, I'll let you think about it before I get home tonight. So you can either call him and tell him that you will never talk to him again, or you will go to him later. I don't know what his wife will say to this, but it will be up to the three of you to decide." She looked at me, whispered something under her breath, and left, slamming the door behind her. "Well, in at least 2 hours, I'll find out if I still have a wife," I said sadly to myself. Sitting down at the table, I did nothing for the next 2 hours. I just sat there, not noticing anything around me. The drive home was short, too short, and when I pulled up to the dark house, at least I had an answer. With slumped shoulders, I walked to the door, wondering what she might have written in her note or even whether she had left it at all. I opened the door, walked in, and threw my laptop on the couch. It felt like my mother had died again, and I was falling into that dark cave again. Never again, I told myself. My house had never seemed so empty, I thought, as I walked up the stairs and hallway towards our bedroom. I wondered if she had already taken her things. "I thought I lost you. When I pulled up, I thought you were gone, and for a moment, I didn't even intend to come in," I whispered, feeling her cheek with my hand. "I love you so much, and I'm so sorry." Before I could finish, she cut me off with a kiss. I got my husband back. Nothing else matters. The next day, I didn't go to work. Fortunately, Linda stayed with her parents. Life was good again. The next day, with a smile on my face, I brought breakfast for everyone and retired to my office. I spent the next half hour looking out the window. I got my life back. After Mom died, Dad tried to live at the factory, but I finally forced him to take a vacation. I sent him on a 2-week cruise, and he came back with a smile on his face and a spring in his step. I guess he got lucky. When he went part-time, I was a little worried, but when he resigned 3 months later, I was happy for him. Dad did his job and deserved a long pension. He was still there as an advisor when needed, but I took his place and did just as well as Dad. I worked hard but tried not to overdo it. Just before our 8-year anniversary, we had a lab accident, and one of our new employees was injured. He wasn't hurt badly, just enough for OSHA to intervene. When they finished, I felt like I had been searched to the core by a nurse with one hell of a hand. Despite all this crap, somehow I missed our anniversary, and by the time I remembered, the damage had already been done. Sheila had planned a trip for the two of us, but due to the OSHA inspection, I simply couldn't leave at that time. "You love this business more than you love me. I can never compete with that," she screamed at me. "Honey, we can go anywhere as soon as they leave. It should be very soon." But she didn't want to hear it. We were still close, but there was a feeling that something was wrong between us. We seemed like a happy couple, but something was wrong, and I couldn't figure out what it was. Sheila hadn't been as active with the Children's Wish Foundation for the last couple of years. However, after the incident in the laboratory, she became involved again. We had talked about giving our daughter a younger sibling, but she has now dismissed the idea. "We're not getting any younger, and if we're going to do this, we should think about it pretty soon," I told her. "Steve, I'm not sure I want to go through this again at my age. Linda is at an age where she's easy to be around, and I like my freedom. Let's think about it for a couple of months, okay?" "No problem. I love you and Linda enough that I don't need another one if that's what you want." So after 3 months, she said there would only be 3 of us. I didn't care. I already had everything I ever wanted. How this cockroach crept into our lives again, I don't know, but he did. Ken and his wife separated, and she received about 45% of his business. He wanted her to take shares in the company, but she wanted cash, so he went into big debt to pay her. Their son wanted to live with his father, and their daughter went with Connie. There were rumors that Ken was cheating. Instead of a messy divorce, because they didn't have a prenup, they just divided everything and went their separate ways. This guy is out of luck. When we saw him at one of the dinners, Sheila just looked at me. "Steve, we'll see him from time to time. It's inevitable," she said as she watched him walk towards us. "Good evening, you too. I haven't seen you for a long time." For Sheila's sake, I was nicer than I really wanted to be. "Good evening, Ken," I said, holding out my hand. "You look good." "I'm sorry to hear about you and Mrs. I could look like I cared. In fact, I enjoyed it inside." You know, sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Well, life goes on. I heard you had a little incident in the lab. I hope no one was seriously hurt. It was a rookie mistake. It took a long time to prove it to OSHA. They pinned me anyway, but like you said, life goes on. Well, I need to go and talk to the others. I see a couple of new faces that haven't donated yet tonight. Take care, and hopefully, I'll see you again, he said with a big smile and walked away. In your dreams, I thought to myself. See, it wasn't that hard. We can all stay friends for the kids' sake. She was right about the kids, but not Ken. I still didn't trust that son of a jerk, and I never would. Suddenly, we seemed to run into him wherever we were. What surprised me was that he was never with another woman. He was still an attractive guy and had more than enough money to satisfy any woman he wanted. Honestly, I didn't care. It was just an observation. Okay, I let my guard down, meeting Ken here and there. I think Sheila decided that what I asked her to promise years ago doesn't matter now. But for me, it did. This gap had become wider. I never knew about the lunches or fundraising visits to other companies until the CEO of another tri-state company casually mentioned that he had been asked to donate by my wife and Ken 2 weeks ago. I think it was for a good cause, and your wife knows how to sell it. You should take her back on your salary. However, the guy she was with, if he was alone, I probably would have given it anyway, but not as much as I did. Between you and me, I wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him, but I guess that's just me. I don't trust almost anyone unless it looks like your wife, he laughed. I said nothing. I waited almost 2 months before saying anything, hoping that she would tell me herself. Although I left a lot of hints, I finally exploded when she told me she was going on a 2-day fundraising trip. Are you going alone, or will Ken go with you? Sheila looked like she had been punched in the stomach. She was caught, and she knew it. Yeah, he'll probably come with me and Gary. I think you know we've been fundraising together for a long time, she said, sipping a glass of water as she waited for what I'd say next. I thought we had an agreement. We did, but that was when you were jealous of everything that wore pants. I think we've both grown up and outgrown that childish jealous behavior. Plus, the schedule is already set for the 3 of us. It's a big route that will take us 2 to 3 days. We need to secure funding before the summer to know how many children we can send to camp. Sheila, you promised me, remember? Grow up, okay? This is about the kids, not Ken, Steve. I'm an adult. I don't need your damn permission to do this, and I'll go. It's too late to cancel. All those months when you moped, and then when you missed our anniversary, did I tell you that I wouldn't let you go back to work? No, we got over it. Sheila, you don't know what you're doing. Steve, sometimes I just don't understand you. That's how we parted that evening. Did we ever make love before she left? What do you think? This gap was now 1/8 of an inch wide. We beat around the bush until she left, and then for several months after that, did we make love again? Yes, but it wasn't the same. It seemed like we were both holding back, not wanting to give each other everything. I tried to tell her that we needed to talk, but all I got in response was sadness. Week after week, the gap grew. I tried to mend it several times, but we were on a collision course with fate. I'm leaving on a business trip on Tuesday and will be back on Wednesday afternoon, she informed me. I have 3 last companies to secure. No, was all I said. Know what? She answered. If you're planning on going with Ken, no, you're not going. Steve, we've been through this before. I told you the reasons last time, and you promised me earlier that you would have no more contact with Ken. I guess we know how well you kept that promise. She looked at me with an angry look. Steve, I'll go, she said, standing still. Like I said last time, think before you speak. You may not like the consequences of what you're about to do. I will go, and nothing you say or do will change that fact. With that, she walked away in a rage. She went on her trip, and I stayed home and rearranged our bedroom. Where's all my stuff? She asked when she returned. In your new bedroom. Which new bedroom? What used to be the guest room is where all your stuff is now. Fire came out of her eyes. Great, just great, she blurted out, rushing upstairs. Since then, our life has become hell in every sense. She was now ostentatiously putting her trips on display in front of me, almost looking for confrontation, but I never gave her that pleasure. When she no longer invited me to fundraisers, I was angry but silent. When this fool came to our house, I made sure he left without her, but not before I marked his windshield with a sledgehammer. The situation was getting worse, so I hired a private investigator to look after her. I was waiting for her on Saturday evening when she returned home a little after midnight. I had a drink in my hand and was sitting in the dark. I went over everything I was going to say hundreds of times in my head, but when she walked through the door, I forgot everything. Sheila. Steve, is that you? We need to talk. Can we talk in the morning? I'm tired and just want to go to bed. It's now or never. You decide, I told her. Okay, since you insist. What do you want to say? She sighed with hostility, placing her hands on her hips. Is this officially the end? Steve, what are you talking about? What's the end? The end of our marriage. Steve, what do you want? I wanted my wife back, but I don't think that's going to happen, do I? We haven't been husband and wife for months, and apparently, I was replaced. She was silent. Well, I had to try at least one more time. I stopped her before she could say anything else. There are pictures of your last fundraiser with Ken on the table. I half expected him to be as gorgeous as some Greek god, but I'm a little disappointed. I watched as her eyes turned red. Here's how it's going to happen. You will be served papers tomorrow, and you will have 48 hours to leave the premises. You will also be issued a court order prohibiting you from coming within 100 feet of this or any other property of mine. You will be able to see Linda whenever you want, but only in this house. Obviously, Ken was more important to you than your own family. It was finally starting to get to her, then she started crying. I'm so sorry. It just happened, and I don't even remember much. Sheila, these things just don't happen. It's not like you fell out of your chair and onto him. He planned it, and you were stupid enough to believe his SOB stories, or he was consoling you because I refused to meet you with him. Maybe I'm not so stupid after all. You can't take Linda away from me. Steve, I've already done that. Get yourself a good lawyer because you'll need one. By the way, I'll send a copy of our prenuptial agreement along with the divorce papers. This will be an interesting read for you and your lawyer. With these words, I left for the last time. It was hard for me to do what I was going to do, but I had no other choice. Ken paid for Sheila's lawyer, but it didn't help her. I thank my father every day I spent in court. No matter how they tried, this contract could not be broken. My team of lawyers got me full custody because I could provide for Linda while Sheila would have to go back to work to make ends meet. She received a lump sum of $50,000, paid for by BMW, all of her clothes and jewelry except those that were my mother's, and finally, generous visiting rights. We agreed on 2 meetings a week and every other weekend. I knew she would end up moving in with Ken because her parents had almost disowned her, but I decided for my daughter's sake to take the high road. It was fast. In just 3 months, our divorce was finalized, and I was free from both of them. Whenever I saw them on the street or at an event, Ken always gave me his stole-your-wife grin, while Sheila always looked away. Like I said, I tried to take the high road until something new came to light. Dad, I don't want to stay over at Mom's anymore, Linda told me one Friday night. I'm afraid of David. Honey, just go back upstairs and I'll talk to Mom when she gets here. Unpack your bags because you're not going anywhere tonight. Dad, I don't want to get you in trouble with Mom. Maybe I should just go. Linda, my dear, your safety is more important to me than any problems your mother may cause. I love you. Now come upstairs and let me talk to your mother. I was wrong. Sheila called me every name she could when I told her I wouldn't let Linda go with her. Steve, David is a little wild, but he's a good boy. She's probably making this all up so you believe Ken's son instead of your own daughter. I thought you were naive to believe Ken last time. Now I think you're just stupid for risking our daughter's safety. You can see her here, but no more sleepovers. You can't do this. I have a court order backing me up. She was now yelling at me. Sheila, I think it's time for you to leave. I closed the door in her face. I called my lawyer and told her to start working immediately because as soon as Ken found out, his pride and hatred of me would take over. So be it. Without any physical evidence, the court overturned my decision. I fought as long as I could, then asked my lawyers to stall. My father had always supported me in the past, but now I was asking him for something that would make it very difficult for him. However, I had no other choice. Dad, I need you to take Linda abroad tomorrow. I will lose this case and will have to give Sheila the right to spend the night with Linda. Dad, I cannot put Linda in danger. Here is her passport, birth certificate, and 5 cash receipts of $100,000 each. That should last you until this is all over. I don't want to know where you'll end up, but it should be a place where you'll be hard to find, if you know what I mean. No contact for 6 months, and if you don't hear from me, wait another 6 months. Steve, I'm just seeing someone, and if you don't mind, I'd like to take her with me. You're an old ladies' man, I said, smiling. Take whoever you want, but it has to happen tomorrow morning. I don't have much time. On Thursday, I kissed my daughter goodbye. I wasn't sure when I'd see her again, but I knew it wouldn't be anytime soon. She cried and said she was sorry, and I told her she had nothing to be sorry for. I gave her another kiss and hug, and she left with just a small pink backpack of clothes and her stuffed bunny. I didn't sleep all night and returned to court in the morning. Mr. Moore, the court orders you to renew your ex-wife's court-ordered visitation rights, effective today. You must release Linda to her mother today or be held in contempt of court. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, was all I said. I left the court and met with Carl, telling him what was likely to happen now. It will be up to you to keep my business running. Do what needs to be done. Here is my power of attorney so that you can legally sign for me whatever is required. I don't know how long it will take, but I have faith in your ability to make the right decisions. From there, I went home, poured myself a strong drink, and waited. My phone was ringing nonstop. I knew who it was, so I just let him call. When Sheila arrived home with the cop, I simply opened the door, let them in, and went back to my drink. Steve, where is she? Who do you mean? I said, continuing the game. You know who. Where is Linda? You mean she's not upstairs? Well, then she's probably with one of her friends. You know she has a lot of friends. You were supposed to give it to me this morning, and if you don't show it, this man will arrest you. She looked confident. You really are a stupid woman, you know. Do you think I would actually put Linda in danger for you or anyone else? Apparently, you don't know me at all. I smiled at her, which made her even angrier. I was arrested and taken to the station, where I was placed in a cell. The next morning, I was brought before Judge Thomas, who demanded that I reveal the whereabouts of my daughter. Your Honor, I don't know exactly where my daughter is, I told the judge. Well, Mr. Moore, perhaps a few nights in a cell will refresh your memory. Mr. Stephen Moore, I find you guilty of contempt of court. You will be held in custody until you reveal the whereabouts of your daughter, Linda Moore, and prevent Sheila Moore from exercising her court-ordered visitation rights. That's how it all started. After 4 months, Sheila wanted to meet me. I refused the first couple of times, but then curiosity got the better of me. You look a little thin, she said as we sat down at the simple wooden visitor's table. Just getting rid of the extra weight I've been carrying around for the past few years, I replied. Steve, I don't want this, but I want to see my daughter. She told you what was happening. I warned you, but you didn't listen, and now we've both lost what we valued most. I've changed my request for judicial review of the meetings. Didn't they tell you? I heard, but I don't trust you anymore. You learned to lie, remember? Steve, that's old news. We have to move on. We're not married anymore. Your fault, not mine. Does it matter whose fault it was? What matters to me is that I have never cheated on you in our entire marriage. You can't say the same, can you? It only happened once. You have to trust me, and it happened after the big fight we had before I left. So you said to yourself, I'll show this fool by spending 2 days in bed with Ken. You brought this on yourself. Don't you think I understand it now? If I told you I was drunk and didn't even remember, would it have changed anything? Your man showed me those terrible photos, and I only had a hazy memory. I can say sorry until the end of time, and you'll still never forgive me, so why waste your time? The issue is that I won't let Ken's son get close to our daughter. You may think it's not that big of a deal, but to me, it is. I don't trust you anymore because even though I gave you a chance to make amends, you still lied to me. Now you will live with this decision for the rest of your life. You know those pictures of you and Ken? If they somehow end up on the internet, how effective will your fundraising be after this? They might give you a couple of bucks for the night, but what self-respecting CEO would donate money to someone like you? You wouldn't. I wouldn't say I will because I'm in the prison where you put me, but if some evil person wants to take revenge on you, I won't be able to stop them. Imagine the look on your mom's face if someone sends them to her home address or maybe the church they go to. Anyone can easily figure out that you had intimacy with someone other than your husband while we were married. Do you hate me that much? You have no idea what I'm willing to do to protect our daughter. I think we know which side each of us is on. Plus, you'll have to support your new man when his world falls apart. Steve, what are you up to? What could I be up to? I'm in prison, remember? A month later, Carl came to me with the usual update. Steve, I provided everything you asked for. Everything is checked and fully documented. We have not one but two pieces, if you know what I mean. I'm ready to get started on this. All you have to do is just say the word. Carl, I need you to do me a big favor today. I explained what I needed. You're joking, right? No. Do what I asked and then come see me on Thursday. Then I'll let you know how to proceed. I slept great Tuesday night. I would have slept through breakfast if the guard hadn't told me that I had a visitor. Good morning, Ken, I said with a big smile on my face. I'm guessing it's a beautiful day outside, although I haven't had a chance to see it in a while. Stop talking nonsense, Steve. Your man said that you want to tell me something important. I'm here. Let's talk. You have 5 minutes. Ken, I know Sheila lives with you now. This brought a scornful smile to his face. Not only does she live with me, but she sleeps with me every night, he chuckled. Just stick to the plan, I told myself. Anyway, I want you to kick her out of your place today and sign a written agreement that you will never see or talk to her again. Is it clear? Why the hell should I do this? Because if you don't, I'm going to unleash the hounds of hell on you, and my friend, you won't like it. Trust me. You stupid weakling. I took your woman, and now you threaten me from here. You are pathetic at best. If this is the best you can do, I'll leave now. Just so you know, I'm planning on having some fun with Sheila tonight. It was so easy to get Sheila into bed with me. 3 drinks with something extra, and she was mine. Don't try to blackmail me with your pictures. I installed the camera the first evening and recorded it all on DVD. Maybe I'll send you a copy. He stood up to leave. I wanted to kill him with my bare hands, but I needed to provoke him into telling me what really happened. I felt bad for letting him get away, but I knew I would end up having the last laugh. Well, boss, what should I do? Carl asked, looking around. Carl, do you know what they do to a cockroach if they find it? They crush it under their feet. I told Ken that I would unleash the hounds of hell on him, and he laughed at me. Do it, and do it today. I gave him final instructions, and I didn't care if it was recorded on the prison monitors. 2 days later, Collins Manufacturing was investigated for falsifying test data. It turned out that about 30% of the parts were not even tested, and those tests that were carried out were, in most cases, falsified. Parts that did not meet specifications were approved, shipped, and built for the military. A former employee came forward, saying he could no longer live with himself knowing that parts for military aircraft were not produced to the specifications of their orders. A government spokesman said all open orders had been suspended and all assets of Collins Manufacturing had been frozen pending further investigation. I think this former employee will sleep much easier tonight, knowing he did the right thing by exposing a potentially deadly situation at his former company. I felt pretty good, even though I was in prison. Collins Manufacturing's shares dropped like a rock. Ken's face appeared in the news for the next few weeks, and he was now facing criminal charges. As an aside, the video of Ken Collins was turned over to the district attorney yesterday. In the video, Ken confessed to an inmate in the county jail that he had put illegal substances in the drink of an unknown woman for the purpose of seduction. At this time, neither woman has come forward with allegations, but the case remains under investigation. About a week later, I was again called before Judge Thomas. "Mr. Stephen Moore, you are free to go. Your ex-wife has withdrawn all charges against you and asked the court to set you free. I am not sure what game you have been playing with this court, but I strongly recommend that you do not come before my bench again. Is that clear?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied. "Case closed," she said, slamming the gavel down on the table. "Baith, call the next case, please." And now it is finally over. "Well, Steve, you're free," Vicky told me. "I hope you can go back to your normal life now that this is all behind you." "Vicky, nothing will ever be normal again after what's happened to me over the last 9 months. I just hope everyone responsible gets what they deserve." I left the court, and Carl picked me up outside. "What does it feel like to finally be free?" "Wonderful, simply wonderful. I did what you asked, and your father will arrive at 10 tonight. He will be ushered through customs without anyone knowing that Linda has returned to the country. No need for that now. Any problems have already been fixed. Take me to the nearest bar. I need a cold beer, and I'm not going to wait until I get home." Carl and I went to the first bar we came across. After a couple of bottles of Miller Lite and Corona, we stopped at Longhorn Steakhouse, and I ate my first decent meal in almost 6 months. "You look better than ever, boss. You've lost weight and don't have that belly anymore. You could also lose weight by doing 200 squats and 100 push-ups twice a day. I guess Burger King for lunch every day is canceled now." I laughed and ate the last piece of steak. "You know, Sheila has been living in the house for a couple of weeks now. When I told her about Ken, she was shocked. I had to hire someone to stay with her for the first 2 days until she calmed down. She's still nervous. She wants to know if you'll talk to her. I said you'll see her later tonight. I guess I forgot to tell her that Linda and your father are coming over tonight. I've thought about her and Linda almost every hour for the past few months. I knew I would have to deal with this sooner or later, but I had other things to think about. My daughter was coming home." Linda saw me and threw herself into my arms, almost breaking my neck from the hug. "Dad, I missed you so much." "Will I have to leave again?" she said with a worried look. "Never again, darling, never again. Let's go home." My father walked over with his new girlfriend, Grace, standing behind us. He shook my hand and then hugged me. "You look a little thinner. I think prison has done you good," he said with a smile. "Steve, this is Grace," she extended her hand to me. I took her hand and told her I was glad to meet her, but we needed to move all the way home. Dad told me where they were and how he moved every few weeks to make sure they would be harder to find. "When this is all over, I'd like to go back with Grace and really see the places we found," he said, looking at her. My father was in love. Carl dropped us all off at my house, and I told Linda that her mom was waiting for her inside. She ran into the house. I slowly walked into the house with my father and Grace. When I walked through the door, I saw Linda and Sheila crying and hugging each other. Sheila looked at me and whispered, "Thank you," and I just nodded and went upstairs. For 2 hours, everyone gave me updates, but finally, I could see everyone's eyes starting to glaze over. It was time to call it a day. Linda got her room, Sheila got hers, and I got my old bedroom. Dad said he would see me in a couple of days and left with Grace. "Steve, we need to talk," Sheila tried to start, but I told her there would be time later. I took a long, hot shower in my own bathroom and lay down in my big, soft bed. It was a heavenly feeling. It was difficult for me to fall asleep. I was used to all the night noises from prison, and my bedroom was almost too quiet. I don't know who stocked the refrigerator, but at 7 o'clock the next morning, I was just glad to have real food for breakfast. Sheila came down a little late, dressed in the white robe I had given her many years ago. "Have you made your coffee yet?" "The whole pot?" I asked. "Come on," I said, taking the second cup. Carl called me the day before you met Ken in prison. He told me everything and said that I better not even go back to his house to get things. He kept me informed of what was happening and the fact that Ken was much worse than I could have imagined. Sheila, we don't have to discuss this right now. I tried to argue, but she interrupted me. Steve, if we had had this conversation months ago, none of this would have happened. But we didn't, and it did. I'm not even going to try to say I'm sorry because those words don't even come close to conveying what I did to you and Linda with my stupidity. Just please don't take my daughter from me anymore. I can't live with this. The tears started flowing again, and the hatred I felt was gone, but she was no longer my wife. Sheila, you can stay here as long as you want. I'm not going to kick you out. Carl will pick up your things from Ken tomorrow. He's the least of your problems right now, I said with a huge smile on my face. We're not married anymore, and we never will be. You chose him over me and Linda's safety, and I can never forgive you for that. She cried even harder. For our daughter's sake, you can stay here as long as you want. You can have your bedroom, and I can have mine. Right now, Linda needs both of us to bring her back to reality, not two people pulling her in different directions. So, if you agree, so be it, at least for now. My only request is that you do not bring home men, friends, or lovers. Is that clear? She nodded, but I could see that she was a broken woman. She had lost everything because of her naive delusions, and she knew it. 4 months have passed since Linda returned. Life is almost back to how it was before all this madness. Dad married Grace in a small family ceremony, and they are now somewhere in Mexico sightseeing. I asked him where he was going, and he just smiled at me. I told him to call if the money runs out. My business is doing better than ever, and when I was cleared in the papers, all those scoundrel companies that convicted me started coming back. I decided to leave all that behind and not inflate the prices, well, maybe not too much. Ken has lost everything and is facing multiple charges. He will likely spend over 20 years behind bars. His ex-wife called and said she knew what kind of person he was and hoped we could rebuild our lives. We meet for lunch sometimes, and she is truly a wonderful woman who I would like to get to know better someday. Sheila still lives in the house. She's not dating, she works part-time in the lab while Linda is at school. I pay her like any other employee, but I try to contribute as much as possible to her retirement fund every month. Are we together? Not really. And like her, I don't have the time or even the desire to date right now. Are we together? Absolutely not. I still don't trust her, and I don't know if I ever will again. But Linda still has a few years left before she graduates, and I'm not going to kick Sheila out at least until then. That is, unless I meet a smart, beautiful woman who I can trust and feel comfortable with. If I've learned anything these past years, it's that anything can happen when you let your guard down. In the end, Stephen managed to preserve his honor and protect his daughter, but the price was high. This story reminds us that the truth can destroy everything, but it is what gives us a chance for a new beginning. Every action has consequences, and only time will tell if it was worth it. Let us know how you like our story in the comments. Thank you for staying with us, and bye-bye.